Will Goldstein here from thekingscourt.com, and the subject of this video is who are the Anunnaki and should we be concerned? And another subtitle might be the Underworld Gods. And sources for this video are not really the Bible, but more ancient texts, myths, people associated with the Bible. In other words, the other nations. But Mesopotamia is where this is really about, in Sumer. So you have ancient texts, myths, and archaeology. It's where you get a lot of info about the Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki were people, offspring of Anu or An. Some references might call them sons of light, believe it or not, because they're shining. And Anu or An is a sky god and king. So again, they're people from the sky. So you wonder, are we talking about aliens right off the bat? Some people believe they go back as far as 8,200 BC. So, and between there and say the 5th millennium, and they're really associated with the land of Sumer, which is the ancient civilization of the world. Okay, so we're talking about the very beginning of humanity. Mesopotamian deities, they're gods. Some people say they're angels. Some people say, who knows? Or some various opinions. But they're definitely Mesopotamian deities. And some people say they visited the earth. They're relevant to the Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian cultures, so they're very, very, very ancient. Epic of Gilgamesh is something that a lot of people might know about, but he was 18 feet tall and 6 feet wide, so he was a pretty big guy. So we're talking about the giants. So the Gilgamesh is a giant, so he's further down the road, let's say, descendant from possibly of the Anunnaki. So the Epic of Gilgamesh is 2nd millennium BC, and so we have a similar story to the flood in there. But anyway, these Anunnaki people, they supposedly brought great knowledge, and there's a triad that sort of exists, kind of like a trinity sort of that exists in them, and Enki and Anu and Enlil. Anu is considered the highest of them, and this elite gods are called Dingir. An, god of the heavens, supposedly, and his wife is goddess of the earth, and she's Ki, and that's his wife. Okay, so and they have these 7 thrones in the underworld, so they're underworld gods. So they're also associated with a lot of other gods like Inanna, the goddess of sex, love, and war. And the Igigi are, I think they work for the Anunnaki. So these names, Enlil supposedly split the heavens from the earth, and Anu took the heavens, and Enlil took the earth. These are really ancient legends that we're dealing with here. So, like I said, Mesopotamia. And Enki, and he's way up there, and he's the god of water and crafts and creation. Whoa, we got a creation god here. So let's see, Ki was a mother goddess. And the thing to understand about all these gods and goddesses is they were all worshipped in different cults. So they're a pantheon, but they're kind of separated themselves. In fact, they even went to war with each other. So, just like the world, they're at war with each other. Families can't get along. So, so the origins are found in Ur. That's really interesting because basically Abraham, the father of you could say father of both Judaism and Christianity, came from Ur, which is a land where these people are from. So we could really make a pretty good supposition that he was a further on descendant down the line, possibly even related to the Anunnaki, the Sumerians. So, because that's where he came from, in Ur. So we're going way, way back in history, long before even, in fact, Abraham was at the end of the reign of the Sumerians. So he was coming out of there at the whole final ending of everything. So this is an incredibly vast culture that existed long before him, and he was the extreme tail end. And so he was the end of one world and the beginning of a new. The exact number of the deities is unknown, but one text mentions about 50 of them that were associated with the city of Eridu. So Eridu is going way back. That's a contender for the Garden of Eden. So we're talking about the first cities that in existence. We're not even a city that's so far back. It's before cities even existed. So we're the earliest civilizations known to Earth. Okay, so the lesser deities are known as the Igigi. That's why I said they're younger deities, and they were doing labor for the Anunnaki, but they revolted. Enki was the Anunnaki god that was in charge, and he, in the story, the myth, or the story, replaces them with humans. So, we had the Babylonian creation text, and now we have further down the line the descendants. We have Marduk, which is a biblical person that's in the Bible. So he was creator with Enki of the humans, and Marduk divides 300 in heaven and 300 on the earth, resulting in the shrines and the temples. So we have all these ziggurats that were coming up in these shrines. But the descendants, as we're moving down through this line, and then from the Anunnaki, then new cultures are arising. I would assume somehow related to the Anunnaki, because they're posted in the same area. So these are the Sumerians. They did cuneiform writing, advanced knowledge in math and astronomy and science, music and poetry. Perhaps they got it from the Anunnaki. And there's all kinds of crazy myths, that you have. The Anunnaki were from Planet X or Nibiru, but eventually, according to the stories or the records, they were conquered by the Akkadians. So there's parallels in here in the terminology. So, for example, you have the word angels, and then you have the word Ananai or Anunnaki. Like I said, they're known as the Shining Ones, which is a parallel to Lucifer, which basically that's what Lucifer means. And so you have these Apollo's wise or sages in the book of Enoch, and they're referred to as angels, and we have in the book of Enoch we have the Watchers and the Nephilim, and so there's a military arm associated with this, and these bright and shining ones. And in Genesis we get the term Elohim, and El is some people say the original translation for El was shining one or brightness. So we normally translate El as God, and it's associated often with the one true God with a capital G, and then also smaller gods. So, but there's a lot of dispute amongst scholars as to the original interpretation of the word El, whether it should be translated God or should it be translated shining one, brightness. So an Elohim is a plural, so we have plural gods, small g. It's also associated with might, strength, power, the word El. And we get other words throughout cultures like elf, and Irish elves, or whatever, and shining beings. Okay, so El has to do a lot with shining. Like I said, it's used for God or all the gods. And Sumer is the earliest known civilization, and interesting, another way of saying Sumer is Shinar, shining, the land of the shining ones. And so you have the Tigris, and they're down at the Tigris and the Euphrates River, and that's the land of the Watchers, the birth of civilization, Garden of Eden. They were come to watch over humanity, just like in the Book of Enoch. So it's the place of the Garden of the Gods, is Shinar, the Garden of the Gods, and it's the immortals. Okay, so you get a picture of God sending down, or even coming down with these other shining beings and visiting Earth and going to the garden, and they have their mountain of assembly. So God is the basis for all illumination. So if they're shining, well, of course God is shining. So it's the shining ones. And therefore, he's the source of all knowledge. Some believe that the Anunnaki, they are also associated with the lords of cultivation, date back, like I said, to 8,200 BC. And like I said, they established the Garden of Eden. They're also associated with the zodiac and astrology, astronomy and astrology, and a Babylonian astronomy. And this goes back to the origin of the 3rd millennium BC in Mesopotamia, exactly the same place we're talking about. And some of their gods are also associated with the zodiac, like I said, and the constellations. Enki is associated with Capricorn and associated with the planet Jupiter. And his wife is called Nimki. And anyway, Enki is the father of Marduk, who is Babylonian in the Bible, also referenced in the Bible. And Marduk is associated with being the creator of the zodiac. So also so these two, Enki and father and son, which is interesting. Father, they're associated with creation. They're father and son, Enki and Marduk, the co-creators of the world, supposedly. But they're also associated with dragon and serpents. So that ought to give you a warning, okay? So Enlil is associated with Baal, which is the storm god. And so anyway, so they're all worshipped and like I said, separately in their cults. And you have a moon goddess and Inanna, or Sin, where we get the word sin. Again, serpents, sin, dragons, devils. Oh gosh, okay. So and so anyway, the son of Enlil is the war god Nimrod. Okay, so that's a historical name that's associated with Babel. Okay, so in Enlil, I don't know, there's some people say there's some association with Enlil and Horus and Osiris together, and they're all associated with the constellation Orion. So, and also back in the times, we also get Lilith is also associated with the Sumerians. Again, Sumerians, you're associated with the Anunnaki because the Anunnaki were pre-Sumerian. So Lilith is a Sumerian demon goddess, and there's a picture of her riding Samael, which is a picture of Satan, and she's associated with lust and temptation and she would be the goddess of the world of pornography, Lilith. So anyway, Inanna is the moon goddess. You have other gods, so you have Uta or Shamash, and he's the sun god or god of justice, and he's also the divine judge of the underworld. Okay. And and he's giving laws, supposedly, I guess, I think 282 laws or something to King Hammurabi in 1787 BC, king of Babylon. And anyway, so these gods are at war within the pantheon, and Inanna is also referred to as, or a relation to Ishtar, which is associated with Venus. And that's also associated with the pentacle and pentagrams, which are definitely in witchcraft and evil, and 5-pointed stars. Yeah, the Anunnaki are also represented, which is kind of bizarre. There's some reference to them being fish beings or reptilian humanoids, as though they came out. I mean, there's some wild tales of them. It's also associated with these reptilian gods are associated with Hindu and Egyptian deities, and wild tales of them coming out of the water during the flood. And the form of a fish with the head of a man, and there's this fish god named Onassis, and all of these crazy legends. But it's really interesting to know something, have some idea about the ancient world. Okay, because this is a world that we're evolved out of. We can't escape that. So, and also there's all kinds of crazy legends about the Sumerians were there to mine gold, and they were forced to mine gold. So, in other words, the Anunnaki were ruling over them and forcing them to mine gold. So, they're basically a ruling family, a dynasty, a pantheon. Enlil is depicted as a bull. The bull is associated with Atlantis. So again, it's amazing how all these parallels are drawn, because that's Plato refers to Atlantis in association with the bull. So like I saw that Enlil is associated with the bull, and Enki is the god of the abyss, is a serpent. This is pretty demonic stuff. Ekor, or the mountain, or the assembly of the gods. So this is kind of a picture of them all hanging out, and this is where they're hanging out, and or the garden of the gods. Some people would say it's Eden. And so you have the assembly of the gods, and there's this mountain paradise, which some people call this mountain Mashu, and other people say it's Mount Hermon. Well, a lot we hear about in the Bible. And some people would say it's Eridu, but Eridu is associated with the abyss. Some people say it's Nippur, because Enlil was associated with Nippur. So it was a god, again, in that particular cult. Enlil is the leader of the Shining Ones, or the Anunnaki. He's sort of like a pharaoh, and he's the king. He's actually killed by the demons in the underworld, and a blade was thrust through his heart. So this is the leader of the Shining Ones. But some people say he lived for thousands of years, so they say. And like I said, a lot of people say they came from somewhere else, some other planet or some other dimension. Supposedly they passed on all this forbidden knowledge to us. So when you're talking about the Garden of Eden and eating the knowledge of good and evil, well, here you go. Anunnaki are right in there for the knowledge of that good and evil, So, and also if you get into the Book of Watchers, it's what's interesting is the shiny ones. You have the good ones and the bad ones, so they're not all bad. So you have the rebels, the bad ones. For example, if I get into the Watchers, Raphael is there, and he's dealing with these fallen angels, and so that could be another video. But this is the Anunnaki. They passed on this forbidden knowledge to us. They ruled in Sumeria supposedly before and after the deluge. So, like I said, Anu was their supreme god, and he's in some people's minds associated with the Egyptian Ra god, because Ra is in Egypt is the supreme god and the symbol for the sun shining. It all makes sense, right? So they're all in cahoots with one another, okay? There must be some truth to this if they're in all these cultures, okay? There's some wild tales of the fish beings associated with the Anunnaki, like I said, in the flood, and they came out of the sea onto the dry land, all kinds of crazy stuff. And, there's also, they're associated with the zodiac, which is also associated with the precessional of cycles. 25,800 years, which is 12 times 1,250 years. So in other words, there are cycles that go every 25,800 years, because by then it goes through the complete zodiac. So, and this is associated with a Ouroboros snake and the tilting of the earth on the axis. And some people say that this is associated with reincarnation. And again, we have the serpents and the dragons, and the serpent or dragon is eating his tail. I guess that's, yeah. So that's where we get the cycle. The wife of Enlil asked for the Garden of Eden. And so you have this Council of Seven. There's also some reference to the seven archangels being there. Again, they're associated with being there. And so you have the good angels and the bad angels in opposition to one another. Ishtar is also the lady of the gods. So, or she's also Ninlil, which is the wife of Enlil. And Ninlil is also called Ishtar, and she's the lady of the gods. So you picture this mountain of the gods and the assemblies. Well, she's the lady presiding over the whole event. And so in the Sumerians, they spell Eden, Edin, as the abode of the righteous ones. Well, that's interesting. So yeah, again, you have the abode of the righteous ones, and then you have the abode of these demons, I guess, that they would eventually become. You have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in Eden, and the secrets of the shining ones, and they're the passing on these secrets to humanity. The tree was used in their rituals, supposedly, and to make their trances, to take them to heaven. And some say the Hebrew Kabbalah system, or the seven chakras are associated, which is associated with the tree of life, and the seven levels in the chakras are associated with the human spine. So these are all association and parallels that we're getting. Well, the kingdom, Jesus did say the kingdom of heaven is within you. So, Sumerian, so you have the ziggurats or the towers, and they had 7 levels, and their basis are for the pyramids, and it's the house of the gods, and because there's 7 major gods in their council, so that's why you have the 7 layers, and you're saying at the top where the main position of the gods was. I guess that's where they had their meeting. Could have had their meetings, I guess, or something. So, and some people even draw parallels to Jacob's ladder, a stairway to heaven, where the gods live at the top. You get all these kinds of crossovers, and some people associate the 12 tribes of Jacob with the zodiac and the different signs. So there's parallels that are even drawn across there. So like I said, Anu's the king of the gods in their system, and perhaps if the Anunnaki are the watchers, the fallen angels, well then you have the gods, and then you have the Anunnaki. So it's kind of it's kind of hard to figure out there. Are the Anunnaki just the gods, or the Anunnaki also the descendants of the gods? So if you look at it that way, they maybe could also be the Nephilim, so you have the fallen angels, and you have the Nephilim, and you have the giants. And so now we're getting into the book of Enoch, which might be coming. But so for example, in the book of Enoch, some of the main characters are Samyaza or Azazel, and but these Anunnaki are called sons of heaven. So there you go. It's so. And a word about the Nephilim. There's some reference say they're 137.6 meters tall, which equals 450 feet. So anyway, so I might do another video on this, but I hope you enjoyed the video. It's the ancient world, and there's a lot of stuff on the internet you can find. So I just did a lot of a study for it and put it out here so you can kind of see some of the parallels. So you can see how association of the Old Testament and the New Testament, and where some of these crossovers come in, because, hey, it's the ancient world. Will Goldstein here, thekingscourt.com, and check out my music site, The King's Court, maybe at Pandora or whatever, and subscribe if you like the videos.